My name is Bryce, and for my semester project, I wanted to do something on an instrument. Specifically, the instrument that I chose to work on and to present on is one that you're familiar with. And it's also one that's pretty unique. It's the piano, which you might have guessed. So there's a lot of cool things about the piano. A lot of people aren't familiar with that or don't know that. But one of the cool things about the piano is it has a huge range. If you can see the keys here, there's 88 keys, which is a ton. That counts the black ones as well. It goes all the way down here. You can listen how low this is. Pretty low, which is actually, if you've ever heard of an organ, the organ's low notes that they play with the foot, it's actually lower than those 16 notes that they play with their feet. So pretty low down there. Also up here, the highest note is, believe it or not, higher than the highest note of a piccolo. So once again, just an absolutely huge range right there. Also, if you come back here, I'll talk a little bit more about this. Specifically, some of the things that we're going to go over today is we're going to go over what the piano is. We'll also talk about the history, a little bit of brief history about it, and then we'll mention how it works, and then we'll play something for you just for fun. All right, so if we dive in a little bit closer here, you'll notice that the front is so much more complex than the back. You'll also notice that it is a keyboard string instrument, I apologize. It has keys in the front, strings in the back. That makes sense. It's obvious why we sometimes call it that. You'll also see here that there's so much going on, as we pointed out before. There's actually 12,000 parts to a piano, which is absolutely incredible. 10,000 of those parts, 10,000 of those parts actually move. So don't ever even think about making a piano, because that's just going to be way too difficult. I also want you to be aware that there are 230 strings on an average piano, so it's quite a bit, and there's a lot of tension there has to be able to play the music well and to hold up well. And the tension, just to give you an idea, there's about 160 pounds of tension pulling on those strings. That's just for one string. Now for the entire thing, there's about 18 tons of tension, so a whole lot of pressure, which is just absolutely amazing as well. But it didn't start out that way. It wasn't always that complicated, or it wasn't always that wise to begin. It actually started, just a little bit of a background on that, is it began, the first keyboard string instrument was the clavichord. So the clavichord was made all the way back in the 1440s, so just forever ago. And there was a lot of cool things about it. It was more like a small keyboard. And it became popular a little bit, but more so than that, the harpsichord came about that same time, which may have inspired the harpsichord, which was much greater, much more influential. If you'll see the shape of the piano, that's kind of how the harpsichord was. It was a little different, but it had kind of that same style, how it goes waves in and waves out. With the harpsichord lasted for about 300 years. It phased out around 1750. Which was kind of interesting. So it made such a big impact during that time. And later on, they decided, hey, you know what, there's still some things that we can improve on it, specifically how it plays and how it hits the strings in the back. And so they decided to change it a little bit to what they call the pianoforte, which eventually became our piano here that we have here. All right, so once again, we're going to take another close look. I know we're going in and out, so I apologize for that. But I just want to show you a little bit about how it works. It's actually really quite cool. All right, so we're going to show you, there's white hammers down here, if you can see that. They're like white-looking knobs. I'm going to play one of them, and I want to make sure you guys can see that. I'm going to play right here for you. And see how it came up, that knob, or that hammer came up and hit the string? Well, that's what makes the sound. You'll also notice that there are black dampers here. That's what they're called. And the purpose of that, the dampers, is so that once you take your finger off of a note, it stops. the music's that note stops playing, which is actually really important as well. That's just as important as the hammer, because without the damper, it gets all jumbled if you weren't able to have the damper there. Now I'm just gonna show you a little bit more. Down here, if you can zoom in just a little, or not zoom in, but look at it just for a second. We have a couple pedals. And I'll be real brief with those, but basically the main use of the pedals, this one lifts those dampers, those things that we were talking about, just in case you do want to blend something, you can do that when you play. And I can take my hand off and it still plays. The other one will just play one note or however notes you want it to, and then you can play normal after that. And the last one shifts the piano to make it hit the hammers hit it differently to make it sound a little bit quieter. So pretty cool, pretty interesting. All right, so I know that if you're like me, if you didn't see the piano, if you haven't seen it now, a while back when I first started, a long time ago, I saw the keys and I said, holy cow, I've got to memorize all those notes, I've got to learn all those. The nice thing is it's a little more simple than it looks, which is good. So if you can remember the first 7 letters of the alphabet, that helps out. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and obviously you can. And those are the main set of notes that you're going to see with the piano. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then it repeats itself. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Just continues to do that throughout the whole piano. It starts with the A, does that whole thing all the way up. So the nice thing about that is once you do find those scales or those letter names there, you're able to understand kind of the tone. So you're going to play the same note, but it's just going to be in a higher pitch. Just higher, higher, or lower, lower, which is great. This also helps out if you like to play around with the piano, if you like to learn music or do instruments, things like that. It helps out with beats, things like that. And so I'm just going to show you, if you find out what goes well with a C, you can also realize that C, E, and G go together, because that's a triad. And we won't go into that, that's a little too complicated. But that's going to sound good when you play those together. It's not clashy, just nice and smooth. So I'm just going to play a small thing, just something that sounds good together that you can play around with. Okay, now I'll do just a little more complicated one for those who want to play around with it even more. So just kind of a fun little thing that you can do once you learn where those notes are, because you can hit a G anywhere across the piano with a C and it's going to sound good. All right, so now I also want to show you that just as important as knowing some notes or having fun with it on the piano is to find out how to read music. So I actually asked my mom, who teaches piano, to be willing to come and play a song for us, just a little portion of it, but where she's actually reading the music and using the piano to see how it works at the same time. So I'm going to grab the camera from her and we'll have her play for us.